Hi, Vail Fucci, the headshot doctor here. Today, I'm not doing headshots with you though, I'm doing product photography. It's something I also do as well in my studio, and I'm going to show you today how you can actually do this with our Westcott Ice Lights that I love so much. Now, the only limitation that I find for doing product photography with the ice lights is the size of the object. If I had an object that's any much larger than what I've got going on right here, I would probably need to go up to some larger either panels or soft boxes, just so that I have a bigger spread of light, or I'd need to have additional lights going on of additional ice lights so that I can have it be well lit all throughout. But right now here we've got a setup of 3 of them, and it's really doing the job nicely. So when I'm doing product photography, I really prefer to use constant lights just because I can so easily see exactly where the light is falling on the product. It makes it that much easier and quicker for me to go through item by item and make sure it looks just right. So what you're going to find is for the rest of the shoot, I'm going to turn off the top of the lights here so that we have the only light that's going on it is that you're going to find coming off of the ice lights, and so we're in total control. So the first thing that I want to do is you can do multiple different setups. You could just do, even nowadays with using eVoto and all the different techniques that are out there to be able to do object removal from there. It used to be that you'd be doing products on white and you had to really make sure that that backdrop was really white, and then you could, but now you can select out well. But you're going to notice if I don't light up that background, you're going to notice that we've got some more shadowing that's coming along the edges, and that if I ended up switching it to just in post, getting rid of the white in the background, it would look kind of odd, and our brain would go, something's off about it, because when something's naturally lit from behind in white, it should be that the edges are not going to be so dark. So in the past, when I would be shooting and lighting the background, I'd have to go get a big boom arm out, have a light hanging in front there. It was big, heavy, it was kind of scary. I love this as a background light. By using the tilter bracket from Westcott right here and having also the battery that's on here, it basically automatically makes it so I can have a boom going right over that, not my subject in this case. Technically the bag is my subject, but it's the object that we're photographing here. So that allows me to have a little bit of light coming on the object there as well as lighting up my background. Okay, and then the second thing is having the 2 lights from the side. Now for product photography, when you're doing products on white, it's really important to have it be so that you have even lighting on your object there. It's just traditional. If you end up having one turned off, or we're only single lighting it, you're going to have it be very much shadowed and stuff. You want very even lighting. It's just the way it goes for the traditional sense of having catalog pieces. You want to have a little bit of shape, be able to show some bits of the texture, but you don't want it to be like, you know, just completely flat or having so much texture showing. That wouldn't be as flattering. This is what the typical lighting you'll see. So basically, you'll end up having your lights at about 45-degree angle on either side of your object. Depending on how far back and how big the object is, you may end up feathering it and moving it more forward or back. But in this case, because I have these tennis balls and this large bit on the sides there, I need to have it a bit more aimed to actually be lighting up those side portions. Okay, same thing here. But what I'm going to want to make sure I do is that I don't do it so much on the sides that this center part starts to actually go darker than the other parts. I always want the front of my object to be in a good amount of illuminance. Now, if you're doing things for real precision of doing for corporate shoots, you may end up wanting to make sure that things are so perfectly aligned of getting even light throughout, you might choose to use a light meter to go through and make sure everything's proper. Another way that you can do that is you can merely just take an object and place it at the different points there and take a shot and bring it into Capture One and then see what the luminance value is at those points. Again, this is if you have a person, a client that is going to be really specific as to having things be absolutely perfectly lit all throughout. Not every client is going to be that litigious about how you're lighting your pieces. Right now, I happen to know that this is giving me a pretty nice lighting setup. Once I go and I tether directly into Capture One, I'm going to be able to see if my eye is deceiving me or not, or if I need to change anything. I'm just using my wonderful Canon R6 Mark II and using the 24 to 105 RF f4 lens. When you are shooting product, This is not a time for shallow depth of field. When it's the product on white, you need to have all the details nice and crisp. So what does that mean? Well, we need to have a very high aperture. I'm typically shooting anywhere in the neighborhoods of between 9 and 13, depending on the object and how much detail there is and how much depth there is to it. So in this case, right now, I will go in and it's product photography. So I want to make sure it's at the highest quality possible. I'm going to bring my ISO down to 100. And then I'm going to, right now, I have my f-stop currently at f10. Let's just, for the sake of things, even bring it up a little higher. Let's bring it to f13. So we just know that everything is crisp as can be. And now the thing that I'm going to use that have play with is both I have power on the lights, but in this case with the constants, I've got it turned up all the way to 100. I'm now going to just be able to play with the shutter speed because this is a still object. It's not moving. It's not going anywhere. So I've got my aperture at f13, my ISO at 100, or the lowest that it can go there. And now I'm going to change my exposure purely on the basis of my shutter speed. So I can make it a slower shutter speed, and it's not a problem because I'm on a nice still tripod here. And then what I tend to do in this situation is, yes, you can take the shot from back here using this, but we're going to go over to the computer and you're going to see I use it so that we have no possible bit of movement that's coming from or camera shake from me pressing the button. I'm going to trip it right from capture one. Okay, so let's come on over to our computer here. We've got our laptop running and now I can trip my stuff right here, just clicking right there on it. So if we want to go in a little bit closer shot on so I can just right here click right on the little capture button and it'll come in. You might say, well, nothing changed. Well, it seems like nothing changed because we were doing it. Nothing moved on it. I'm going to move for you right now the bag just slightly so you see as we go from one shot to the next there, you'll see it ever so slightly move. Boom, there between those two. Okay, so what are we looking for when we're looking at this? I want to make sure that everything is exposed properly. Now, in this case, you might be looking at this and go, oh, okay, the actual handle of the racket is looking too dark and the center is being overexposed. In fact, it's not the same color. It is more of a creamy tone up at the top and that center is very white. But I want to make sure that nothing is actually completely blown out white. It would be too much. So I'm going to use a tool to hover over the different spots and I can see right up here the value of the luminance number. So 255 would be it going all the way to the top. That would mean it's blown out white. Right now we're reading at this point at about 240 at the brightest point. And I can even see if I look over on my histogram, I'm seeing the exact same thing. There are no whites that are totally blown out all the way at the side. So it's looking like my exposure is really pretty good from here. So if your client really needs you to have the color precision, you're going to want to get a color checker. I prefer using the one from Calibrite, and the passport's nice and small. This is one that has both video, so if you need for video stuff, it has that, but it also has the photo side, the Color Checker Classic. And so what you're going to want to do is you'll be shooting in RAW, and you will then go and take a shot, the same thing and the same lighting. And so you'll take a shot. Boom, there it is. And so now, if you needed to have someone be able to go through and do a precision edit based on these colors, you can do that. What I will do just to make sure that things are looking right while I'm doing this is do at least a base white balance on this portion. I have right now on the Ice Lights, it's set to 5600 Kelvin. And let's look right there, right on the money, 5600 Kelvin. All right, so, well, we know that those are calibrated well. Looking at this, we know that it's actually pretty true to it, but at least to our own eyes and looking here, I think I'm probably going to bring this down just a little bit cooler. Let me see how, as it was shot, let's see, that was shot at 5,000. That's definitely going to be a bit cooler than what we would be looking for. So somewhere in between those two, so I'll bring this down, and that's looking about right to me now. So another thing I love about shooting with the Ice Lights for product photography is that they can be both the battery operated and they can be on our AC power. And I'm actually able to just go right into it with a USB-C little piece that goes right there and into the wall. So if you're doing a shoot and you're doing it for a long time and you need it to be staying powered, you can totally do that and just have it adapted that way. Or honestly, the life on these is really pretty impressive overall with the battery. I have multiple different batteries so that when they run out of power, I've got another one just ready and to go to be charged, or that is charged to pop right back on if I want it. I'm a big klutz, so I'm usually a fan of the less wires possible. That's why you'll even see I make sure that for myself when I'm tethering, I always am using the Tether Tools very high visibility orange ones. We can see our lovely tether there so that it's less likely for me to trip. Okay, so we've grabbed our test shot so that we have our stuff with color. We can pull that back, and so even afterwards in post, anything that needs to be done can be done with the raw images. Great. So from here, I'm going to grab my shot. I'm going back into tether, and I'm going to look and see. Well, while this at first might go, oh yeah, that looks perfect, I'm going to say something seems off. And what it is that our item is not perfectly straight to us here. So whenever I'm actually doing my shoot, I'm going to want to make sure that it is totally square. I'm going to make sure that all the different parts are looking as good as possible. Before I did this, I looked to see, you'll see on this tennis piece here, one side has a bunch of gunk right there. The other side, not so much. So I'll make sure that the sides that are looking their best are the sides that are coming forward. I slightly turned it, so let's look at the difference. We have here where it was slightly turned a little to camera right, a little too much back, and now here forward. It's subtle, but see, this is the type of clean shot that the client is looking for. I'm also making sure that the little loop is in the back, coming through and looking nice there. I wouldn't want it to be a shot where the loop is looking like this. See how that's now flat? Or I wouldn't want it sloping to one side or falling backwards, like that. Okay? Now, if it's an object that keeps falling down no matter what, the thing that will help you is using fishing line or a nylon twine, and that I'll have boomed over the top, and then I'll pull those up. And amazingly, you won't see that at all in the product shot for the final thing. Ideally, also before you shoot this, you'll notice, depending on the product that you're shooting, that there may be wrinkles in the product, etc. Depending on the client, they may want this to be steamed really well, everything fixed up. I'm going to, before I move on to my next product, look and make sure that everything is clear in focus. All right, seeing that part, everything is looking good. And if it wasn't in focus enough all the way back, I would just go and make it so I have more depth of field. All right. So what a client usually will look for is multiple views. And it's the same thing with this one. We'd get a front, a back, with and without the different stuff in the pockets, and even one on the inside. So you can see this has worked very, very well for it. And just to show us the difference again of what I said before, of the difference of how it looks, I'm going to turn off that backlight, grab our shot one more time, and we're going to see how different this is going to look. We'll notice now, between here to there, look of our actual object. If we made this have white all the way around, you can see how much darker this is on the top versus when we have our light that was turned on, it's nicely illuminating all these bits and it looks really clean. So typically when I'm shooting a whole product line for a client, they'll have multiple of the same type of things in different styles. So for example, this season I probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 different backpacks that I'm going to need to do. This setup is going to work nicely for all those different backpacks. I'm going to not then go from shooting a backpack to shooting a small bag, to shooting a visor, to back to shooting a backpack, and back between all those different things. It'd all be different setups, different heights. So strategy-wise, when you're shooting product, if you have things that are similar of the actual styles or the actual size, at least at a minimum, you're going to want to shoot those all at the same time before moving on to the smaller objects. So you'll see in a second, I'm going to bring my setup down for that'll be a little bit different for when I'm shooting a smaller object here than when I'm shooting the large backpack. So a lot of times when you're shooting small objects, they're not going to sit just the way you want. They're going to need to be propped up one way or another. And this is not one where fishing line is going to be doing you a lot of help. So what you're going to want to do is look around and find objects that are on the heavier side, but that will fit behind there. So in this case, I'm going to use an old Godox flash because I don't use Godox anymore. I just shoot Westcott. But it makes for a nice paperweight to go behind here. I'm going to style the pieces and make sure that everything's looking good. I'm going to make sure that at the bottom that it looks nice. And a lot of times, a lot of ways of styling these things, it's a matter of just kind of pulling the fabric one way or the other. You'll also notice that if we come in close on this right now, if I shot it like this right now, we'd have this top edge showing, but this not. So it's good to be consistent. Look to see where your zippers are. And it's all about those little details, getting that right in the shot before you take the shot. Now the beautiful thing is that nowadays everything's digital, so we don't have to worry about it. I usually take a whole lot of shots. I come in, grab my shot here, okay, and up. We're still set for giant objects, not for tiny ones. Yep, that's true. I'm going to want to make sure that I'm lighting for that object. I'm going to bring this down. And you can see with these how easy this is. It's wonderful. And I'm going to bring my lights down just a bit lower here so that I can have it come to that height. And there we go. Bring that in. And bring this in. Now, consequently, because these lights are now closer, my exposure may now be different, because now if it's closer, it's most likely that the power is going to be increased on here. So I need to do one of a couple things. Either I would power down the lights, or I would go and change my shutter speed. I'm going to, in this case, most likely change my shutter speed. I'm also going to bring my camera in closer to my object. So when you're taking a photo of an object, you want to be right on the exact same plane as the object, so that the center of your lens is going to be right at the center of the object. So I'm going to adjust my tripod here, bring things down a bit. Okay. And then I'll notice that my object at this point is wider than it is tall. So I happen to love using this collar on here that allows me to very quickly be able to rotate from landscape to portrait without me changing the orientation of my actual tripod. So I'll lock that into place. And the reason why I do that is I'm going to use up all the different pixels that I have in my camera here to get the detail on these smaller objects. I want to go in closer. I want it to fill the frame. Okay, so now that I've got that, I've got it filled the frame, I'll take my sample image, and now we're going to notice it's pretty close to what it was, but it is a little bit brighter than where we were. So here was that object before of those things to here, and now we went closer. You can see how it brightened up. Okay. In theory, the editor afterwards would be able to turn this, but I also sit there and go, well, if I'm going to be doing multiple of these bags over and over again, I'm looking at this. I can see the line of this is not straight. I need to move my camera and get it straight. So I'm just going to slightly level this out so that that is looking straight to me now, or at least straighter. Going to pick my focal point there and grab my shot. Okay. So if we go from here, where we were a little tilty, to now, that's looking much better. Again, I'll notice of how much zipper is showing. I might try to tweak, make that little bit come out just a little bit higher. May or may not work, but this is what makes the client happy, is I do those little tweaks to just try to make things as good as possible. Didn't really show much, and it seems like the bag is kind of turning backwards now. So I'm going to tilt it forwards just a little more. There, that's straighter. And then I'll do, depending on if it's an object that they've shot before, I'll look to see historically what angle we'd have this. If I don't, then what I do, if there's no artistic director there on the shoot, I'll shoot it both ways. So we have one where it's straight off, and then I'll do one where I tip this piece coming up on the top of the bag. That's okay, dear. All right. Let's see. Oh, it really moved it. Like a lot, girlfriend. Shifty. There we go. All right. So we can see, I have a gut feeling that the art director is going to prefer that. But it's always good giving them options. The other way I'll sometimes do is kind of playing with the little parts so that people can actually see the accessories and the hardware, is I'll move things down and just try. But you'll find that sometimes things don't want to play nice. You kind of have to hold them in place. That's the nature of the beast of product photography. Yeah. So you'll just look and see, and you click on it, and then you'll see, are there any additional views we need? You'll often get a line item sheet from the client, and it will mention if there are additional views that you need. Right. But sometimes they won't, and so it's nice you can call back and check with them. And sometimes I just give them additional views that I think might be beneficial. Sometimes of details, those things are good. All right, so if we go back to our tennis and go to our backpacks, there we go. So we can see that, in fact, we have all these additional views. So you have the front, that side, open, which is the devil, and, and back. Now, why is this one so hard? This one is hard because, guess what? Bags don't like to stay open like that. And you also, to get light up in there is not easy to make it so that this is lit and this is lit. So this is where having things that are really maneuverable, that are easy, like your ice lights, are actually going to be really helpful. As opposed to just having things that are hard to move around. So it'll allow you to lighten those things up. Some of it has to sometimes be done in post, of bringing the exposure up. The thing that you can't do is overexpose it, because there's only so much you can pull back of highlights, but you can always brighten things up. The other thing is, because you're taking it on a tripod, you can do an HDR type of shoot of, do one where it's a little bit darker, and then the next shot a little bit brighter, and then combine them in post. All right, the last item that we're going to go over right now is using a small hat. It's like a simple small object. Now, sometimes with small objects, you'll be still doing it frontal views. Others, you'll be actually doing a flat lay. A flat lay is going to require that you're actually going to have your camera directly above the whole setup. In that case, it's really great having a tripod that will make it so that you can actually bring the column out and move it so that you have the camera going in this direction so that it can be shooting straight down instead of shooting ahead, the way we typically do. The reason for that is that you sometimes have things like clothing that is nice and flat that you have to be shooting. You may have towels, all sorts of different objects that just end up photographing better when they're flat instead of having it out and being straight up and down. But in this case, we've got our little hat. So what I would end up doing is, if it was an object that I've been shooting before for these people, or if it's an object from a line that has been photographed before, I will either find out from the artistic director what it was that they wanted, or I'll even look back historically and see how it's been shot. Otherwise, I will end up giving them multiple shots and multiple angles myself that I just think are going to be, you think of it this way, it's objects that people are going to be looking at this online, typically is the way that they're deciding whether they want to buy this. You're taking the shots that help them decide, is this an object that I want to buy or not? So you're getting all the different sides of it that they're going to be able to see. So first I start with a frontal shot here, and if I grab my shot, just of us plunking it down, I'm going to notice that, in fact, it is not straight. We're going to want to have that turned just a bit. Okay, so I'll go back, and I'm going to change that just a bit. And the other thing to recognize is, the closer your object is to your lights, the brighter your object is going to be. So we can see now, this is actually a darker type of visor. By me bringing this closer to the lights, it's getting brighter and brighter. So you have to be aware when you're putting your objects back in there, back and forth, of where it's falling in there. If you're bringing it farther forward, you may inadvertently start overexposing, or if you put it too far back, inadvertently underexposing it. So try to remember that sweet spot that you had where the light was looking just perfect. Okay, let's take another shot. Okay, now does it look like it's straight at this point? Not really, exactly. So we're going to rotate it, and we take another shot. There we go. Now we'll look back, look and see how have these things been shot. So there we go, head in the game, visor. And so we'll look and see, are there additional views or not? You'll click on the item, and then you'll see. Some of them won't have all the different views, some will. So you click to see, okay, we've got the frontal, we need to get a side. It's not showing any of like the straight on back of the view, but you're showing that enough that it's showing that it's actually got a Velcro back. Okay, so we pop it around, and if it doesn't look round, then you play with it, and that's the thing. See, I'm pulling off lint, making it look nice. I'm making sure that the branding is looking good. Okay, then we grab our shot, and while it's looking pretty close, you're going to notice that it's not quite in the center of the frame. And while you might go, well, it doesn't matter, they'll be cropping it out. It does matter, because you're going to have some distortions that are induced one way or another in our frame with that. So I'd rather make sure that I go through and either move my camera or move my piece so that we're right in that right sweet spot again. So we'll take our shot. Now we're much more centered. When you're shooting smaller objects, sometimes your light stands are only going to be able to go so low, and if you're shooting having this with the battery piece on the bottom, if you were connecting it just on the bottom, it may be that you're lighting your object too much from the top and you want to be more on the same line with it. What you can do is you can use right on the back, it has multiple settings of holes here. So I'm going to right now screw my tilter bracket into the back portion of this. So I'm going to put this here. There we go. Okay. Let me tighten that on. And now with the tilter bracket, I have a whole lot of degrees of freedom that I can twist this, that I can use on my light. So I can now bring this down much lower to my object, so I'm centered there. Now it's going to illuminate it much more evenly. So that's your primer on product photography. We shot our products on white today using those Westcott Ice Lights, and everything was shooting perfectly, and the color was absolutely perfect with having it be that professional grade that you get of that color consistency that reads out from these wonderful lights. I hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions, just leave me a DM in the comments below.